Welcome! We've got a great video for you today. We're going to be looking at CPP break-even analysis. Specifically, we're going to be looking at CPP at age 60 versus 65 versus 70. Now we're going to cover a number of different topics in this video. We're going to be looking at a simple CPP break-even analysis, simple but wrong. We're going to go into why this type of simple analysis actually doesn't work. We're also going to look at some CPP break-even myths. We're going to look at some factors that affect CPP break-even, and then we're going to go into a deep dive into a detailed CPP break-even analysis using Advice's new compare feature. We're going to compare CPP at age 60 versus age 65 versus age 70 in actual financial planning software. Now let's start by walking through a simple but wrong CPP break-even calculation. Now when we think about CPP at age 60 versus 65, the first thing that we want to identify is how much we'd get at age 65. In this example, we're going to use $1,000 a month just because it makes the math a little bit easier. Now, if you were to start CPP at age 60, you would see a reduction in benefits. Those benefits would start earlier, but you'd see a reduction of 36%. So instead of getting $1,000 a month at age 65, you'd get $640 a month at age 60. This is part of that actuarial adjustment if you start CPP earlier. Now the difference there is $360 per month. So if you start early, you get those benefits 5 years earlier, but you're going to be receiving $360 a month less. Now over those 5 years between age 60 and 65, you're going to be accumulating an extra $38,400 in additional payments. So starting early gives you a benefit in the additional payments over those 5 years, and that in this example is $38,400. Now when you start CPP at age 65, you're going to be getting an extra $360 a month more. So how long does it take for you to catch up that $38,000? Well, it takes about 107 months to catch up to what you would have gotten if you started a bit earlier. So $38,000 divided by the additional $360 a month gives us 107 months until we reach that simple break-even point. Age 65 is when you started. It takes 107 months to reach break-even. That's roughly about 9 years, which means the break-even age in this very simple CPP break-even analysis is age 74. Now the problem with this simple CPP break-even analysis is that we didn't include any opportunity cost, no impact from investments whatsoever. And that means that this break-even analysis isn't quite detailed enough. So we want to go through a detailed CPP break-even calculation in some actual financial planning software. Now I'm going to show you how we'll do this on a basic calculation. Now we're going to go through some examples towards the end of the video. We're going to look at different factors that affect this CPP break-even point. Okay, we're going to use the Advice platform to explore this CPP break-even analysis, this detailed CPP break-even analysis. Now, if you want to do this yourself, you can go to advice.ca and sign up for an account. It's just $9 per month. So let's look at CPP at age 60. So here we've got Mary. Mary's going to start CPP at age 60. That's towards the end of this year when Mary turns age 60. So we've got a partial payment in the year 2025. 2026, we have full CPP benefits, and we're also drawing from a registered account. Now, Mary wants to spend $45,000 a year in early retirement. So from an income perspective, we've got some CPP benefits, which are lower because they didn't start later. They started at age 60. And we've got some registered withdrawals here to meet Mary's spending goal. And we've got tax of about $8,258, so $8,258 estimated for 2026. Now let's take a look at what this looks at like at age 65. So at age 65, we're going to have the same tax. We're just going to withdraw more from the registered accounts. Nothing has changed with Mary's spending goal. It's still $45,000. But by delaying CPP until age 65, one, we're going to get more from that CPP benefit, but we're not going to spend any less. We're still going to spend the same amount in those early retirement years. We're just going to draw more from the investment portfolio, more from the registered accounts. So that's an important thing to highlight when we do a detailed CPP break-even analysis, is that we're not spending any less. We're actually spending the same amount. We're just drawing from the investment portfolio while we wait for those CPP benefits to begin. Now, if we go to the compare feature here, we can see those different net worth lines over time. So let me hide the one for CPP at 70. let's just look at age 60 versus 65. Now we both start at the same point. We both start with the same amount of financial assets, but the CPP at age 60 scenario has more financial assets. Now this makes sense because we're not needing to draw on the investment portfolio. So there's less opportunity cost here because we're getting those CPP benefits earlier. Now if we look at CPP at age 65, we see the investment portfolio declines a little bit faster. And this makes sense because until the age of 65, until those CPP benefits begin, we're relying more heavily on the investment portfolio. And that does create a bit of an opportunity cost here. We can see that age 65, if we were to start CPP at age 60, we'd have about $603,000 in financial assets. But if we were to delay CPP until age 70, because we need to still draw some income from the investment portfolio, we would have less at age 65. So we'd have $558,000. Now that difference there is about $45,000. That's more than the $38,000 that we saw in that simple CPP break-even analysis. This is an extremely important point, is that there's a larger gap there. There's an opportunity cost when you delay starting CPP. And the opportunity cost is because now we have to draw on the investment portfolio to fill that income gap. And if we're drawing on the investment portfolio, that means that those investment assets are being spent and they're not producing an investment return. There's no income being generated from those spent investments. And that's why we have a bigger gap here at age 65 than just that simple CPP break-even analysis showed us. Now, before we take a look at that crossover point, which you can see over there to the right, let's first talk about some of the myths and some of the different factors that affect CPP break-even. Now, my name is Owen. I'm an advice-only financial planner and a CFP. If you're enjoying the video so far, I would love it if you like and subscribe. It really helps us reach more people through the YouTube algorithm. Before we go really deep into those CPP break-even examples towards the end of the video, let's first touch on some of the CPP break-even myths. One myth is this idea of starting CPP early and investing it. Now, it's the right idea, it's just framed the wrong way. The way I would suggest framing this is that when you start CPP early, you're withdrawing less from the portfolio. Now, same sort of idea, it does include the impact of investment returns. It does include the fact that you're maybe drawing less on the investment portfolio, but I would look at it slightly differently. I would frame it up a little bit differently and say that if you start CPP early, you're not investing the difference. What you're doing is you're just drawing less from your investment portfolio. You don't have to close that income gap because you're getting those CPP benefits early. Now, the second myth is this idea of that if you start CPP early, it's this decision between starting CPP early or spending less. So the idea is that if you start CPP late, then you're kind of losing out on that early retirement spending. That's not the case. What's really happening is that if you start CPP early, you're either choosing to start CPP early or you're choosing to withdraw more from your investment portfolio. You're typically not spending less in early retirement. So either you start CPP early or you just fill in that income gap using more investment withdrawals. So those two myths are important to highlight, and it'll frame up a little bit when we look at the factors that affect your CPP break-even point. Now, there are two important factors when we think about CPP break-even and investment returns. So as we saw, there's an opportunity cost there when you choose to delay your CPP benefits. And one of those impacts is the asset allocation that you have. The more aggressive or assertive your asset allocation, the higher your asset allocation, the higher your weighting to equities, the higher your expected return, and the higher your CPP break-even age will be. Now that seems a bit counterintuitive, but as we go through the examples next, you'll see why that is. So asset allocation is a big factor when we talk about CPP break-even. Now the other factor here is your investment fees. The higher your investment fees, the earlier your CPP break-even point. There's just less opportunity cost. So if you have higher investment fees at a bank of 2% plus, then actually starting CPP earlier may not be in your favor. You might want to delay CPP benefits because there's less opportunity cost if you draw on those investments instead. Now let's take a look at what this looks like. We're going to look at three different examples with different investment fees and different asset allocations We're going to show you how that CPP break-even point changes depending on the asset allocation and the investment fees of the portfolio. Okay, we're back to Mary's example here. So let's first take a look at the investment plan within the platform. Now in this case, in this conservative example, we've got Mary with a 2% investment fee and a 60% allocation to equities, and also a 2% investment fee and a 40% allocation to fixed income or bonds. So this is your typical balanced kind of mutual fund at a bank or large financial institution. The expected return on that portfolio is fairly low. It's a fairly balanced, fairly conservative investment portfolio, and those high fees eat into the returns of the portfolio. So we're expecting about 3.39% weighted return. Now let's rerun the projections with those return assumptions. So we've got CPP at age 60. Let's run CPP at age 65. And now let's run CPP at age 70. Now let's jump over to the compare page where we can compare these different net worth projections. I'm going to hide the CPP at age 70 for now, and then we'll compare 60 versus 65 and then 60 versus 70. So as we saw in the previous example that we were looking at, we see this opportunity cost up until age 65, and then that opportunity cost starts to close as those CPP benefits begin. So CPP benefits, they're going to be higher starting at age 65. They're going to start catching up to the CPP at 60 example. So when is the crossover point? When does CPP at age 60 start to lose out? It happens at age 79. So this is much later than the age 74 break-even that we saw in that simple CPP break-even analysis. And that's because those investment returns, the opportunity cost there, has a big impact on the CPP break-even point. So age 79, if we're looking at CPP at age 60 versus 65. Now let's take a look at the CPP break-even at age 60 versus 70 instead. So let's take a look here. So here again, we can see the same starting point. We can see that the opportunity cost is actually much larger in this example, which makes sense. We're delaying CPP by 10 years, which means that we have to draw on the investment portfolio for much longer. Now it does catch up faster because again, at age 70, those CPP payments are going to be 42% higher than age 65. But when does that crossover point happen? Not until age 82. So starting CPP at age 70 in this example, it only starts to win out at age 82. That's the break-even point. So actually a little bit further than that 60 versus 65 example. Now that's with a fairly conservative or balanced portfolio with high fees. Let's go back to the investment plan and let's see how this changes if we change the fees to 1%. Now this will increase the expected rate of return. It'll increase it by 1% because now there's lower investment fees. So we go from a bank kind of mutual fund portfolio to something that's a little bit less expensive, maybe a portfolio manager. We've got 4.4 or 4.39% expected return. Now let's rerun those three projections. So let's do CPP at age 60. Let's run CPP at age 65. And let's run CPP at age 70. And now let's take a look at the compare. So here, let's start at 60 versus 65. Let's look at the opportunity cost. So 645,000 versus 598. A little bit higher opportunity cost here. And when do we get to the break-even point? Well, we don't get the break-even point until age 81. And if you remember from the last example with the lower investment returns, it was age 79 for 60 versus 65. So those higher investment returns actually makes it harder to reach the break-even point. And that's because there's more of an opportunity cost if you choose to delay your CPP benefits. Now again, this is sometimes a bit counterintuitive, but it makes sense. If we choose to delay CPP and we're drawing on the investment portfolio, the higher the investment returns, the bigger the opportunity cost of delaying those CPP benefits. So in this case, with lower investment fees, that pushes out the CPP break-even age for 60 versus 65 to age 81, an extra 2 years. Now let's look at age 70 versus 65. Again here, bigger opportunity cost, much bigger. And let's see where this catches up. So where do we flip over? Age 83. So again, a little bit longer because of those higher investment returns. Now let's look at an even more assertive portfolio. So let's go to even lower investment fees of 0.25%. So this might be a all-in-one sort of ETF portfolio, lower investment fees. And let's assume a more assertive risk profile of 80-20. So 80% equities, 20% fixed income, 5.8% expected return. Now, what do you think is going to happen to the CPP break-even analysis? My suspicion is it's going to get pushed out even further. So let's rerun these three scenarios: CPP at 60, CPP at 65, CPP at 70. And now let's take a look at the compare feature. Let's go over here and start at 60 versus 65. So here we've got 659,000 versus 708. So again, we're increasing that opportunity cost a little bit more. And when is the break-even point? It's quite far out here, age 84. So we had age 79 with a 60-40 portfolio, 2% fees. Then we had age 81, 60-40 portfolio, 1% fees. Here with a 0.25% fees and an 80-20 asset allocation, so 80-20 portfolio, higher expected returns means that we're pushing out that break-even age even further until age 84. Now that's way past that age 74 number that we saw in that simple break-even analysis. Now let's look at age 60 versus 70. Much bigger opportunity cost again, because again, we've got higher investment fees. So that opportunity cost just keeps growing with the higher investment fees. And if we take a look at the CPP break-even point, age 70 only wins out at age 87. Age 87 if you've got those higher investment returns. Now this is super important. Now there's lots of other benefits here. You can see that this net worth line for the age 70 is very flat after age 70, after those CPP benefits begin. This is one of the big advantages of starting CPP later, is you have this longevity protection, this inflation adjustment. There's lots of other factors to include in a CPP break-even analysis, but if we're looking at purely the math, the break-even point, it really gets pushed out quite far when we include the impact of investment returns. Now, as you can see, the decision to start CPP at age 60 versus 65 versus 70 is a very complex decision. There are all sorts of factors that might impact the decision and the break-even point around CPP benefits. Now, we just looked at investment returns based on the asset allocation and the investment fees, but there are lots of other factors that impact the CPP break-even point. For example, if you were eligible for Guaranteed Income Supplement, GIS, that income-tested government benefit is going to be greatly impacted by your choices around CPP start age. So there are additional factors that you need to include when figuring out when is the best time for you to start your CPP benefit. But if we summarize what we just looked at, investment returns are one of those big assumptions when you look at CPP break-even analysis. The higher your investment returns, the bigger the opportunity cost of delaying CPP benefits, and the further out you are pushing your CPP break-even point. So this is a super important factor to keep in mind. Now, there are obviously a lot of other factors that impact this, so I'd highly recommend creating your own retirement plan, doing this sort of analysis, and comparing the different CPP start ages so that you can figure out the right CPP start age for your retirement plan. Thanks so much for watching. I'd love it if you like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.